May 1st, grandpa's stories. Wow, the share of the lion. Once four beasts of the jungle, a lion, a jackal, a wolf, and a fox decided to go on a hunting expedition together. They agreed that they would share their kill among themselves. The wolf was the first one to chance on a prey. He was a stag. He at once struck him down. The wolf then called his comrades in hunting to divide the goodie into equal shares. The lion, without anyone inviting him, promptly came forward to carve the prey. One, he counted on his fingers, that is myself, the lion. Two, that's the jackal. Three is the wolf, and the fox makes four. He made a great show so as to appear fair to everyone. The lion then carefully divided the stag into four equal parts. Then he said to the others, "Since I'm a lion, the king of the jungle, I have a right to the first part. The second part belongs to me by virtue of the fact that I'm the strongest of all. I deserve the third part because I'm the bravest of all." He glared at others fiercely, stretching out his claws menacingly. He growled, "If any of you have any claim to the remaining part, now is the time to speak up." There was naturally none to dare ask the lion for his share. Moral: it is might alone that decides what is to be regarded as right by others. It is might alone that decides what is to be regarded as right by others. The wolf and the lion. Once a wolf stole a lamb and was hurrying to his place to eat it. But all his joy died down when he met a lion who, without even the courtesy, snatched the lamb away from him. The wolf retired to a safe distance. Then he said to the lion in a tone of injured innocence and with much indignation, "You have absolutely no right on this earth to snatch away from me my property in so wrong and unceremonious manner." The lion looked back at the wolf, who was standing at some distance. He decided that walking the distance just to teach the wolf another lesson was not worthwhile. The lion replied casually, "Your property indeed. Tell me, how did you get it? Was it a gift from the shepherd, or did you buy it in the market? What is won by evil is also lost by evil." The plight of the peacock. It is said that in innocent times the peacock did not have much beautiful feathers. He begged God Juno to bestow him with a train of feathers which would set him apart royally from the other birds. His wish was granted. The proud peacock strutted about among the other birds, laced in his fine sheath of gold, emerald, and purple. All the birds, including the beautiful pheasant, regarded him with envy. One day the peacock saw an eagle soaring high up in the clouds. The blue skies attracted the peacock's attention, and he felt a desire to fly as he had been doing earlier. But sadly, he found that he could not. He felt as if he was chained to the ground. It was, of course, owing to the sheer weight of his magnificent pair of feathers. He soon realized that he was unable to fly at all. The peacock was now not at all sure whether he was really happy with his beautiful train of feathers. He became sad on thinking that he would never be able to praise the beauty of the morning sun. He felt condemned to walk on the ground. The poor peacock felt quite depressed and came to terms with the plight that he had himself foolishly chosen. It is folly to sacrifice your freedom merely for the sake of pomp and show. Beautiful moral. The fox and the monkey. Once all the animals of a forest gathered to elect a new ruler for themselves. A monkey rose to the occasion. He began dancing to entertain the other animals. He danced so well, using 1,000 funny capers and grimaces, that the animals were delighted. In their enthusiasm, they elected the monkey as their king. However, there was a fox who felt disgusted at the choice of the other animals. He was the only one who did not vote for the monkey. One day, the fox found a trap with a bit of meal in it. Running up to the king monkey, he told him that he had found a delicious morsel of meal. He had not touched it because it belonged by right to His Majesty the monkey. The monkey felt flattered and gladly followed the fox to the trap. As soon as he saw the meal, he reached for it and got caught in the trap. The fox laughed out aloud. "Ha ha ha ha, you pretended to be our king, but you cannot even take care of your own self." Shortly after the fall of King Monkey, the animals held another election to choose a new king. The true leader should prove himself by his superior qualities. That's the moral. The true leader should prove himself by his superior qualities. The mother and the wolf. Early one morning, a hungry wolf was prowling round a cottage at the edge of a village. Just then he heard a child crying in the house. On listening carefully, he overheard his mother saying, "Hush, my child, hush, stop wailing, or I will give you to the wolf." The wolf was rather surprised, but at the same time immensely delighted at her words. He thought that it would indeed be wonderful to be presented with a child. It would make a very delicious meal, so the wolf settled down under the open window. He expected the child to be handed over to him any moment, though the little one continued to pester his mother. The wolf waited all day long in vain. His hopes remained unfulfilled. Towards nightfall, the wolf heard the mother's voice for a second time. "There, my child, there. The wolf shall not ever get you. Daddy is watching over you, who will kill the wolf if he dares to come near you." Just then the wolf saw the child's father within the sight of the house. The wolf fled from dear life's face, sick. Wow! It is foolish to believe everything that you hear. The wolf and the dog? A wolf, while prowling near a village, met a dog who happened to be very lean and bony. The wolf did not relish such food, but because he was hungry, he decided to eat the dog. "Let me remind you, Your Honor," the dog managed to say while dodging snaps of the wolf's teeth, "how tasteless it would be for you to eat me as I am now. Just look at my ribs. I am all skin and bones with no flesh, but let me tell you something in private. In a few days, my master will hold a wedding feast for his oldest daughter. I shall grow fine and fat by eating the scraps. That would be the ideal time to eat me." The wolf could not help thinking if the suggestion really made sense. He let the dog go home. Soon the day the promised feast arrived. The wolf went to the dog and called him, "Sir, I shall be delighted to have you feed on me. I'll be out as soon as the porter at the door opens in." But the porter was a huge dog, whom the wolf knew from his earlier painful experiences to be very vicious with wolves. He decided to beat a hasty retreat. Moral: do not depend on the promises of those whose interest is to deceive you. Aha. Oh, Grandpa, you're telling us such beautiful, beautiful stories with great morals. It will all educate us, right? The dog and his master's meal. There was once a dog who was very faithful to his master. He was very trustworthy that he would carry food for his master every day. Often the smell of the tasty nibbles in the basket would tempt him, but the dog would remain true to his duty. The other dogs in the neighborhood noticed his daily carrying the basket and grew curious about what it contained. They soon discovered that it was food for the dog's master. They tried a number of times to steal it from him, but the loyal dog always guarded it carefully and ferociously. Once all the dogs in the neighborhood got together and decided that enough was enough. They were determined not to let the dog continue with his routine. So they all stopped the dog on his way. At first the dog tried to run away from them, but finally he stopped to listen. There was the poor dog's mistake. All of them bombarded him with so many comments that he began to feel quite ridiculous about his own behavior. Soon he dropped the basket and seized a large piece of bread and intended for his master's dinner. Very well. Now you may all divide the rest of the meal among yourselves. Do not stop to argue and give in to temptation under the influence of others. Do not stop to argue and give in to temptation under the influence of others. The tortoise and the hare. Once a hare was making fun of a tortoise for being so slow. "It must be a shame being as slow as you are. Do you ever manage to get anywhere?" "Yes," said the tortoise, "and I do so much sooner than you might think. I'm willing to prove it to you by running a race with you." The hare did not at all feel challenged, but was only amused at the tortoise's statement. So he agreed to run the race just for the fun of it. A fox consented to act as the judge. He marked the distance and set the two runners off. Very soon the hare was out of sight. The poor tortoise was left far behind, but the tortoise did not get disheartened. He kept on moving slowly and steadily. Meanwhile, the hare had grown tired and wanted to rest. Moreover, he wanted to make the tortoise feel just how ridiculous it was for him to put his feet against the hare. So he decided to take a nap until the tortoise catches up with him. While the hare slept, the tortoise kept plodding on. He reached the spot where the hare was sleeping and crossed it. When the hare woke up, he was startled to find that the tortoise was almost at the goal. Although he ran swiftly, he could not overtake his competitor at the time. In this way, the slow but steady tortoise won against the swift but overconfident hare. Moral: do not fail to make use of your merits by your own carelessness. Beautiful. The Jackdaw and the Borrowed Feathers. Once a jackdaw happened to fly over the garden attached to a king's palace. There he saw a flock of royal peacocks in all the glory and their magnificent plumage. He was filled with wonder and envy. Now the black jackdaw was neither handsome nor really refined in his ways. He was foolish enough to think all he would need to make himself of the same breed as of the peacocks was to dress like theirs. So he gathered some feathers cast off by the peacocks and stuck them among his own ugly black plumes. Oh, how proud the jackdaw now felt! He strutted loftily among the other jackdaws, dressed in his borrowed finery. The jackdaw then flew down into the garden among the peacocks, but they immediately saw through his disguise. Angry at the cheat, they plucked away the borrowed feathers as well as some of his own. The poor jackdaw was humiliated. He sadly returned to his former companions. However, another unpleasant surprise awaited him there. His friends had not forgotten his superior airs towards them, so they punished him by driving him away with a torrent of jeers and pecks. Moral: one should not feel envious of others. Beautiful. The Wolf and the Ass. An ass was once grazing in a pasture near the wood. Suddenly he saw that a wolf was lurking in the shadows along the hedge. He guessed that the wolf wanted to eat him up. So he quickly thought of a plan to save himself. He pretended that he was slain and began to hobble painfully. The wolf came up to him and asked how he had become lame. The ass said that he had just stepped on a very sharp thorn. Please pull it out, the ass pleaded, moaning as if in great pain. If you do not pull it out, the thorn might stick in your throat. When you eat me, the wolf saw the wisdom in his words. Moreover, he was afraid of choking himself with a thorn. The ass lifted up his foot and the wolf started searching for the troublesome thorn. Just then the ass let loose a powerful kick on the poor wolf and sent him tumbling a dozen paces away. With a lot of effort, the wolf got back to his feet. By this time, the smartass was, of course, nowhere in sight. It teaches me right, muttered the wolf to himself as he crept into the bushes. I'm a butcher by trade and not a doctor. One should stick to one's own trade. Aha! The Wolf and the Kid. There was once a little kid who had grown confident, and he was an adult billy goat and was able to take care of himself. So one evening when the flock started for home from the pasture, the mother goat called out to him. He ignored her. He continued nibbling at the grass. Soon the flock had gone and he found himself all alone. Long shadows crept up with the sun, having set, and the chilly wind made scary noises in the grass. The kid trembled as he thought of the terrible wolf, and lo, there appeared the wolf in person. The kid knew that the wolf would eat him up, so he said, "Please, Mr. Wolf, if you just pipe me a tune, I can dance and be merry for a while. Then you may eat me." The idea of having a little entertainment before enjoying a feast appealed to the wolf, so he struck up a lively tune and the kid danced gaily. The wolf's piping tunes reached the ears of the flock moving slowly homeward. The shepherd's dogs recognized it as the song of the wolf sings before a feast, so they raced back towards the pasture. Seeing the shepherd's dog, the wolf took to his heels, abruptly ending the song. The kid said, "Please join the flock. Do not act beyond your age." Moral: beautiful. Ox and the Frogs. An ox once went to the reedy pool to drink some water. As he splashed heavily into the water, he crushed a young dog to death in the mud. The old frog soon saw that a young frog was missing, so he asked his brothers and sister what had become of him. One of the young frogs replied, a big monster had entered the pool. He stepped on the little brother with one of his huge feet, crushing him completely. The old frog resented the young frog's admiration of the master. He was puffed up with his own pride. Big as you say he was, said the old frog, puffing him up. Was he as big as this? Oh, he was much bigger. They all cried. The frog puffed up a little more. Surely he would not have been bigger than this, he inquired. But all the young frogs repeatedly declared that the monster was much, much bigger, and the old frog kept on puffing himself out more and more. This went on with the frog not ready to accept his inferiority until all at once he burst. Do not attempt the impossible. Do not attempt the impossible. Beautiful. The ass and his master. An ass was once being driven along a road leading down the mountainside. The mountain terrain was very dangerous. It was dotted with sharp cliffs at regular intervals. The master had to lead the ass very carefully so that he would not tumble down a cliff to certain death. The ass obediently allowed himself to be led for some distance, and he came into his own. He could see his stall at the foot of the mountain and could not understand why his master was taking him across a difficult and winding course. He could see that the quickest way down was over the edge of the nearest cliff. Just as the ass was about to leap down, his master caught him by his tail. Though he tried his best to pull the ass back, the stubborn ass would not yield and struggled with all his might. Finally, the master got disgusted with the ass. Very well, he said, have your own way now, you ungrateful beast, and see where it leads you. With that, he let go of the ass's tail, and the poor ass tumbled head over heels down the cliff. Moral: it pays to heed wise and elderly advice. It pays to heed wise and elderly advice. The raven and the swan. There was once a raven who was not happy with himself. You know that a raven is as black as coal. Now, this raven once went a swan. Swan was beautiful, and her feathers were as white as pure snow. The raven grew envious of the swan and wished to become like her. Oh, swan, said the raven, please tell me how I may also become as fair and lovely as you are. Maybe if you have your woods and join me in the legs, eat the weeds and plants that I do, you could also turn fair as I am. Raven agreed, as it seemed the only way open to him, and he was sure it would work wonders for him. So the raven left his home in the woods and fields and began to live in the lakes and the marshes. The raven washed and washed himself all day long, almost drowning himself in the process, but his feathers remained as black as the dark night. The raven had all stopped eating his usual food. He contented himself only with the plants that the swan would eat. As a result, he grew thinner and thinner with the passing of each day and finally died. Moral: one should learn to accept and live with one's own self. The dog and the reflection. A dog was once searching for some food. When a lady luck favored him, a butcher threw a dog a bone to eat. The dog became happy and set off for him home as fast as his legs could carry him. As the dog was crossing a narrow footbridge over a stream, his eyes fell on his own reflection in the water. The image was as clear as that in a mirror. But the greedy dog thought that it was another dog in the water carrying a bone even bigger than his. The dog could now known better if he had only paused to think, but greed made him act in haste. So a bit to snatch the bigger bone from the other dog, he sprang at his own reflection in the stream. Of course, the dog found neither another dog nor a bigger bone in the water, but he lost his own bone, which fell from his mouth when he dived into the water. The dog found himself swimming for life. After much effort, he reached the shore and scrambled out of the water. He stood there sadly thinking of what a fool he had been, and that he would have to search for food all over again. If you act in haste now, you will repent later. Beautiful moral. The peacock and the crane. There was once a peacock who was truly puffed up with vanity. Do you know? Wonder why? Because he thought that he was very beautiful. The peacock felt his feathers were even more beautiful than the rainbow. The proud peacock once met a crane. He spread his gorgeous tail in the sun, trying to impress him. Look, I have a tail with feathers that are more beautiful than those on any other bird. Have you anything to compare with my splendid tail? I feel so glorious. Your feathers are grey like an overused rag. The crane was hurt at the peacock's taunts and wondered what reply he should give. Then an idea occurred to him. He spread his broad wings and flew up in the sky. Flying over the peacock, the crane taunted. Flying is such a delightful experience. You feel the breeze blowing over your face. What are you doing down there? Come on, follow me if you can. Of what use are your feathers if you cannot fly with them? If it was now the turn of the peacock to feel ashamed. He looked wistfully at the crane who with his ugly feathers was flying happily away. Utility is more important than merely possessing beauty. Moral: utility is more important than merely possessing beauty. Fox and the Goat. Once a fox was walking along, lost in the mischievous thoughts, when all of a sudden he fell into a deep well. He could not climb out of it. The fox lay helplessly in the well for a long time, and suddenly a goat's head peeped in at the top of the well. Seeing the fox down the well, the goat thought that he must have gone there to drink water. Since she herself was feeling thirsty, she asked the fox if the water was fit for drinking. The fox replied, "Upon my word, it is the finest drinking water that I have ever come across. Do join me." The goat immediately jumped into the well to drink water. In an instant, the fox jumped onto the goat's back and leapt out of the well. The goat became aware of the plight into which the folly had led her. She cried out to the fox for help, but the wild fox was already on his way to the woods, leaving her alone to suffer. "You must suffer for your own lack of common sense," said the fox. "You were foolish not to find a way out of the well before jumping in." Moral: think before you leap. The Frog and their King. Once some frogs lived in the pond, grew tired of ruling themselves without an able king. They had all become spoiled because of too much freedom. They could do nothing but croak in a bored manner. So they sent a petition to Jupiter, king of the gods, asking for a king. Jupiter knew that the frogs were simple and foolish creatures, but to make them think that they had a king and to keep them quiet, he threw down a huge log. The frogs at first hid themselves among the reeds and the grass, believing the new king was a terrible giant. However, they soon discovered that the king log was a very peaceful and tame ruler. The younger frogs were using him as a diving platform, while the older dogs sat on it for their discussions. The frogs became unhappy and annoyed. They complained to Jupiter about their ruler. They asked for an action ruler. This time round, Jupiter decided to teach the frogs a lesson. He sent a crane as the king of Frogland. King Crane proved to be quite a different sort of ruler from King Log. He was in the habit of gobbling up frogs now and then. The frogs begged Jupiter that they relieved of the cruel tyrant. Jupiter said, "How now? Are you still not happy and satisfied? It was your request, and you have only yourself to blame for your misfortunes." Moral: be sure that you can better your condition before you seek a change. The Farmer and the Snake. On a cold winter morning, a farmer was walking through his field. As he strolled, he saw a snake lying on the ground, frozen with cold. The farmer felt pity for the stiff snake. The farmer was sure that the snake would be brought back to life. After all, it had not died. The extreme cold had merely frozen it. He thought that if he tried to warm the snake, it would regain its senses. There was no fire around, so how was the good farmer going to provide warmth to the snake? There was only one way of doing it. He held the snake close to the bosom, lending it warmth from his own body. The farmer did this because he was a kind man, though he knew that the snake would be very deadly. Under such a loving care, the snake soon recovered. As its strength returned, the first thing that it did was to bite the farmer. The bite was fatal, and the farmer knew that he would die soon. Taking his last breath, the farmer said to those standing around, "Learn from my fate, never take pity on a scoundrel." Moral: do not, out of pity, risk your own safety in helping someone whom you know to be dangerous. The goat herd and the wild goats. One cold winter, a fierce storm was blowing. The goat herd, along with several goats, got caught in the storm, so he led his goats into the cave for shelter. A number of wild goats were already present in the cave. They too had taken refuge from the storm